Welcome back. And we want to say thank you to all of our organizations tabling here today. Show them some appreciation. So whether you're in the gallery or whether you're next to a tabling booth, can we get a round of applause for all of our booths today, all of our tabling? And don't forget, from me to you guys, to show them some love, tell them you're doing a great job today, whether, they are or not. Okay, and we are coming back also to the live stream. Everybody that's out there on Facebook, YouTube, and X, welcome back. Coming up in just a minute, I'm going to introduce our podcasters, Thomas and Lydia Smith, followed by our scholarship winners. So that's going to be really important for you to check out. First, we want to let everyone know about our major sponsor, naturalview.org. This site is designed for believers who are thinking about leaving their religious worldview and joining the natural view of scientific understanding and critical thinking. They're a resource for people deconstructing their faith, and it's full of great podcasts and other resources. Podcasts of the future, everybody. Just get into it. You can check out their table today or visit naturalview.org to learn more. Let's also thank some of our other sponsors. We have the American Atheists, American Humanists Association, Applied Office, Atheists and Other Freethinkers, Black Humanists and Non-Believers of Sacramento, Black Non-Believers, and Camp Omni. And speaking of great podcasts and more, this is about you guys. Join me in giving a warm welcome to the incredible duo behind the Serious Pod Network, Thomas Smith and Lydia Smith. Thomas started podcasting in 2010, which led to Serious Inquiries Only, a show about science, philosophy, politics, and skepticism, opening arguments that breaks down complex legal issues in the news. Lydia, after a career in civil service with the state of California, co-hosts Gavel Gavel and is the producer of the Serious Pod Network. Together, they host Where There's Woke to debunk the cultural controversies that we see across social networks and certain television networks. You guys have a lot of work.
Yeah.
Please welcome with a round of applause, everybody, Thomas and Lydia Smith.
Thank you. All right. Am I on? Yeah, I'm on. Okay. Hey, can you hear me? Is everything good with the mic? Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that introduction. That saves me some time. Because, we are podcasters, and the podcast that we're going to be doing a little live version of for you today is called Where There's Woke. And in that podcast, we debunk fake anti-woke scare stories. I've been debunking stories like this for at least 10 years. Mm-hmm. And as you might know, the pejoratives that I've been called, and maybe some of you have been called over the years, have changed. The nomenclature. It used to be we were the PC police. That was the NEOG PC police. Yeah, that was from like 1990 to like 2010 or so. 2000, and then we were the SJWs, social justice warriors. We can kind of trace the timeline, sort of like the rings of a tree, by the different insults the people have been calling us. Then it got to regressive left briefly for like a couple years.
Very
or the
briefly.
Regressive left.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then now I think we're on woke. I think we're woke. That's the last pejorative that I've identified with. Although we might be transitioning to Antifa. I don't know. I'm not sure.
It feels like it.
I've paid my dues, so I feel like I should be able to.
To Antifa, right? Like you're a dues-paying member.
Yeah. And of course, Lydia Smith, my co-host on Where There's Woke. We're going to do something. I'm going to try to condense a story that we told in, 8 hours of podcasting into about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm going to see if I can do it. But I don't want to get too political on you all, but things aren't great. They're not super good right now in many ways. Whether it's the, free speech, Christian nationalism, whether it's ICE, whether it's anti-trans laws, all this stuff. And I wanted to talk about our show in particular tackles a specific kind of propaganda, because we have a propaganda problem in this country, a really bad one. And of course, there's all kinds, and it's easy for us as a skeptical crowd to say like, yeah, no, let's talk about how everybody else is falling for propaganda. But I wanted to talk about a kind of propaganda that actually skeptics fall for quite a bit. Mm-hmm. It's one that appeals to us. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to single us out as the cause of like where we are, but as a cause, I think propaganda wouldn't have gotten us where it has gotten us today if there wasn't some buy-in from the center and the left. I think if it was just the far right, Fox News, MAGA right, who believe this crazy stuff, I don't think it would have gotten as far as it has. There's propaganda now that has been so pervasive that I guarantee you, some of you folks listening probably have had their entire conception of our country changed at least a little bit by some of this propaganda. And it's perfect because we've debunked so much of it that there's almost like a prototype, like a paradigmatic story that we've debunked, that I've debunked for 10 years that I want to talk about. And then to our horror, what's happening now, we've gotten to the point where now that story is actually happening. So the fake story that they made up is now happening. And we're in a crazy position where for years I've been like, you're making this up, oh no, it's happening, but now it's the right doing it. So, and that is specifically around campus free speech. And so if you have in your head the idea that there's a problem with crazy college campus kids who shout speakers down and get professors fired, if that's something that maybe you think is true, or that you're even vaguely is in the back of your mind, my contention is that is a result of a very concerted billionaire-backed propaganda campaign.
Yeah.
Because I've done a million of these stories, and I'm not saying there isn't like a case somewhere that's not bullshit, but every single one I've looked into ends up being, BS, I'll say, in case there's any kids. Every single one ends up being BS. And so that's why I picked one as, again, kind of the paradigmatic story to show you what goes on and show you the
machine.
Exactly,
yeah.
And how asymmetrical it is. That's the biggest thing, is how asymmetrical it is. And then after I tell you about this story that's from 2021, it's a little older, Lydia is going to take us to now times and tell us what's going on now.
Yeah.
And you kind of can see the difference. So, yeah, so our story, the one I briefly want, how am I doing already for time? Okay, shoot, I'm going to try as fast as I can. It's hard to pick. There's a million of these, but the story I wanted to tell revolves around a law professor named Jason Kilborn. Yeah, Jason Kilborn. I forgot his first name for a sec. Jason Kilborn. So his story, I think, will give you an indicator of how this machinery operates. I think a good way to do it, actually, is I wrote down a quote. Bill Maher is one of the worst purveyors of this propaganda, and I want to read to you what he said about this college professor. So on Bill Maher's program, sometime later, he says, there's a law professor at the University of Illinois, Chicago named Jason Kilborn, whose crime was that on one of his exams, he used a hypothetical case where a black female worker sued her employer for race and gender discrimination, alleging that managers had called her 2 slur words. Oh, mind you, I've edited out some bad jokes and crap. I'm just getting to the point. Knowing the extreme sensitivity of today's students, he didn't write the 2 taboo words on the test, just the first letter of each. But because he merely alluded to those words, he was banned from campus, placed on indefinite leave, sentenced to 8 weeks of sensitivity training and weekly 90-minute sessions with a diversity trainer, and having to write 5 self-reflection papers. So we're all skeptics here. And the case I'm going to make to you today is that I love applying our skepticism, our free thinking, to questions of religion and questions of God. Absolutely, I'm not saying anyone should stop doing that. We also need to apply it to other things. And there are places where we have not been putting enough focus, in my view, and this is one of them. One sec. So, that sounds like a pretty extreme claim, right? Doesn't that sound a little crazy? As a skeptic, do you hear that and think, well, so, hold on. So a professor put 2 bad words, one N blank blank and the other B blank blank, in a law school question for the purposes of teaching, and he was banned from campus? Doesn't that sound crazy? Doesn't that sound crazy? And I thought it sounded crazy. And the sign of how bad our propaganda environment is that doesn't sound crazy to 60% of the country now or something. But that's crazy. So I hear that and I think can't be right.
Yeah,
And
no way.
yeah, and also I have a history of every single time I look into these, that's not what happened. Every time that a national story comes across about this kind of thing, it's wrong every single time. So do you want to know what actually happened to this professor? Let's find out. We love a good debunk. Don't you love a good debunk? This is a debunky crowd. So here's what happened to this professor. But first, before I tell you what he actually did, I want to tell you the quick timeline of how crazy this machinery is. This professor, he gave a test at the end of a semester, and then on January 12th, he rode a motorcycle. Give me a second. I can't. I'm too distracted by that. Okay. On January 12th, he received notice from his administration. This is at University of Chicago Law School, UIC. January 12th, he received notification that he was being suspended from, and that he needed to not go to campus, actually. He was banned from campus temporarily. On January 19th, do you know the organization FIRE? Fire.org, do you guys know them? They're a free speech organization. Many skeptics, and there's a reason why I want to talk about this, many skeptics support this organization. Many skeptics are part of this organization.
Yeah.
And Bill Maher himself was made religulous, was a figure in the atheist movement for a while. This is something that has overlap with skeptics. Fire.org, 1 week later, wrote a letter demanding to know what happened. So, okay, nothing wrong with a letter, right? By January 27th, John McWhorter, who is a New York Times columnist, Harvard linguistics teacher, I believe, he had already done a write-up on it. Mind you, we're a couple weeks in from this event, this random event at a university that no one should know about. February 11th, UIC wrote back to FIRE and told them kind of the truth of what was going on, but pin in that for a moment. By February 17th, the FIRE.org had rated UIC on their 10 worst colleges for free speech just because of this one incident where they said they were investigating a professor for something. And by February 22nd, there was a New York Times, have you heard of them? They're pretty big. New York Times opinion column by Brett Stevens about this story within 1 month. Now, they had not even met with the teacher to start the investigation into the allegations at this time. And already hundreds of articles are online about how this teacher has been banned. The woke left, the students, the crazy campus kids have banned this teacher. They banned this professor from the college. They banned him. I'm telling you, if you Google it, it is 100% results in favor of this professor, and it was within days. This propaganda just network that we've been studying for years, they go to work so fast. They all echo the same talking points.
It's only gotten worse, too.
They hadn't even had the first interview with him for the allegation. For all you know, maybe he did something horrible to a student. You don't know. They haven't even started the investigation. But already we're getting a New York Times, the national newspaper, is already writing about how this is an attack on free speech by the woke left. And this is in 2021, by the way. This is the historical again. So that's how fast this unfolded. The investigation did not even start until February 25th. After we've already had a New York Times column and some prominent people cover it. So that's crazy. So to give the very short version of what actually happened, and the funny thing is, so much of our work demands that we filter through, university like investigations of random professors and like all this crap, just stuff that no one should be caring about except the people involved. It's a very minor thing.
School board meetings, I've watched a lot of those.
It's just the random stuff. Yeah. And so what happened with this professor was that he did that exam and a student had a complaint. He had also had some other incidents of things that were like racially questionable that he said in his class. Okay, whatever. Honestly, not a big deal. It might have been an opportunity for a student to complain. There was a black law student organization that had concerns about his possible things that were a little, racially insensitive that he was saying. If he had just shut the F up, he could have had like one conversation and maybe they'd make him do like one class or something that you have to do for work all the time. And that would be that. But no, this is national news because he made a big deal about it. And because he flipped out so much, he started calling people. Whoa, that is alarming. Okay. He started talking to students about it, angry that they had signed a letter against him. And in one conversation, a black student asked him like, hey, have you seen the letter? Oh, why haven't you seen the letter? And this professor said, probably because the dean thinks I would be homicidal if I saw it. And so the black student later reported that. And because we live in a country of guns with shootings 40 times a day, there's a policy that if anyone, a student or a teacher, says something that's like they're going to be homicidal, then there's like, is this okay? Is the wind going to take me out here? Are we?
Yeah, I can't reach it.
Jeez. Well, anyway, if anything like that happens, they have a policy where they need to be off campus while they temporarily evaluate, is this person a danger? Now, you can disagree with like, okay, maybe it was a sarcastic comment, whatever. But to represent him getting banned from campus for this test question is lying. That's propaganda. He did not get banned from campus for a random test question. He got banned from campus because he triggered a security thing that campuses, because we've had a lot of school shootings. And mind you, this was days after January 6th. People were a little on edge for like angry white people yelling stuff at people of color. You know, they were a little like on edge about that. And that was, there's so much more to this story. How am I doing? Oh, I don't have much time. A little bit more? Couple minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, a couple more minutes on this before we get to the second half. That was what got him banned from campus. What got him in a little more trouble, because that was resolved after they determined it was a joke within days. What got him in a little more trouble, it's a lot of things, I can't get into it, but the most egregious example for us that we thought was really like just awful was he emailed a previous student that he had seen, that he saw had signed the letter, you know, just asked, you know, about this question. He emailed them responding to where she had asked him for a letter of recommendation. So he pulled up an old email thread where she had gotten a letter of recommendation from him and emailed, "I can't believe you do this to me. How dare you sign this letter?" And so he was harassing students who had complained about him. That's a thing that I think a professor should probably get a conversation about, right? Like, is that unreasonable? That if you harass students who have a complaint about you in that very personal manner, that maybe you have a workplace conversation? That doesn't seem unreasonable to me. So why is this national news? Why does Bill Maher know about this workplace thing? Why does the New York Times know about this workplace nothing? Because there's a concerted effort to convince the country, and it's worked, that there's this free speech problem on campuses, that the students are crazy, they're always complaining, and the stories are pathetic. Oftentimes it'll be like a student wrote an open letter. That'll be the entirety of the controversy. And it'll get reported as crazy students. They couldn't even stand that this professor did. And meanwhile, you learned there was no consequences for the professor. It's 100 out of 100 of these that we've looked at. And now, there's so much more to that story. I think I pretty much all I have time for in this version. Check out the actual show if you want to hear like 8 hours of crazy stuff about it, because it's fun on Where There's Woke. But what I've noticed in the past year, well, I mean, there was a little bit of this after October 7th attack, but particularly after Charlie Kirk, we see that this story that I've been debunking for 10 years of these fake free speech controversies is now really happening. So Lydia, why don't you tell us what's happening now?
Yeah, so just to give you some context, the New York Times ran a piece talking about how many people were being investigated, suspended, terminated for social media posts that they've been making about Charlie Kirk and their workplace, right? So the New York Times at that point had said they had been able to find about 150 or so. That number is so low. It is so low because Texas alone, they have publicized this. Greg Abbott has publicized this, that they are currently investigating about 300 teachers, just teachers within the state of Texas because of things that they wrote on their social media pages, on their private Facebook, their private Twitter, et cetera, et cetera.
About Charlie Kirk or even just barely relating to Charlie
just
Kirk.
Quoting Charlie Kirk. I mean, I think a lot of us saw the quotes that he had about the Second Amendment, you know, that some people might die because of, you know, we have to have the Second Amendment, et cetera, et cetera. I want to talk about one case in particular, though, and that's out of Clemson University in South Carolina. So the reason why I want to talk about this case is Clemson, Thomas had mentioned fire and the purpose that they serve. Fire had rated Clemson number 13 as like best school for free speech, whatever that means. And they do these rankings. We do not have time to dig into how they do these rankings. It's nonsense. We'll probably do an episode on that soon because I've learned a lot from preparing for this. But they manipulate survey data, essentially, put their thumb on the scale through these other metrics that they try and make, and then those rankings become weaponized by the right. We saw this a lot with Harvard University, right? And Harvard being brought up in congressional hearings and how terrible Harvard was for free speech and how it needs to be fixed, et cetera, et cetera. Like, Harvard is ranked the worst school by far for free speech. But at Clemson University, supposedly a great school for free speech, we just had a professor fired because of something he wrote on Facebook after Charlie Kirk was murdered. His name's Joshua Breggy, tenure track.
Now hold on.
Professor.
If this is anything like my stories, you research it and turns out he stabbed a guy too. So did you find anything else?
You'll have to see.
Okay,
we'll
we'll
find out. Yeah. An assistant professor in the Department of Environmental Engineering and Earth Sciences, excuse me. And on September 10th, his Facebook is completely private, by the way. He reposted another person's post on Facebook. Not even his words, but it's something that resonated with him. I won't read the whole thing, but let me get to a little bit of it here. Democracy should be built on ideas, not force, but I am going to say this. If anyone thinks that a reasonable price for the Second Amendment is countless innocent lives, and then that person has the cold-heartedness and audacity to say that empathy is likened to a social disease, they will get no protracted sympathy from me. Unfriend me if you don't like hearing the simple truth. I'll never advocate for violence in any form, but it sounds to me like karma is sometimes swift and ironic. As Kirk said, play certain games, win certain prizes.
And then he stabbed a guy, right? After that? No, he just wrote that? Just words on his personal Facebook?
He didn't even write it.
He shared it.
He just shared a post.
That's all he did. Okay.
Now, what Breggy didn't know is that when you share something that is public on Facebook, it keeps those settings. So even though his Facebook was private, now this particular post was public. He realized that a few hours later, changed the settings for the post and made it private pretty much immediately. And then took it down the following day because the university reached out to him and said, hey, can you take this down? It was up for less than 24 hours. But in that time, the Clemson College Republicans had screenshotted it, went over to Twitter. Sorry, I still call it Twitter. I know it's not Twitter anymore. I force a habit. And they posted it on Twitter along with pictures of, from like his profile pictures, because those tend to be public, of him holding a sign saying climate change is real, and another one where it said Black Lives Matter as a frame over one of his existing profile pictures.
Really controversial.
And they wrote with this is not an isolated event. We have another leftist assistant professor at Clemson, Josh Breggy, in a now deleted post assenting to the idea that Kirk's assassination is a result of karma. Who are you hiring, Clemson University? End this now. And then they tag in libs of TikTok. And if you've been following anything that's happening with the right wing and social media, libs of TikTok, oh man, it's bad. It's so bad.
We're so online. I don't know if
really
anyone knows what we're talking about, but this is our politics now.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, this is our politics. Sorry, go ahead.
Quick aside for libs of TikTok, it's run by a single person, Haya Rychik, who is, she's so into this that the superintendent of Oklahoma's Department of Education named her to the Library Advisory Committee to screen for books that should not be allowed in their schools. She's not a parent. She's not a teacher. She doesn't live in Oklahoma. Nothing. She's just so incredibly vocal and important for the right wing that was a move he made.
That's why I was saying, like, I'm sorry for us to be referencing, like, oh, you know this account, libs of TikTok. Before that was pathetic. Now it's like, oh no, that's the Secretary of Labor or something. You know, it's like, oh no, this Twitter account is now the ambassador to the UN.
Yeah.
You know, like literally, it's crazy.
So that post from the Clemson College Republicans ended up being viewed nearly 500,000 times. This is like, you know, a college Republican Twitter account. Most of their things are 2,000, something like that. But this was starting to gain steam. By the next day, we started to see really, really intense Twitter back and forth. So much so that South Carolina legislators were getting involved here. And now they're saying things like another leftist indoctrinator has been identified in the Clemson faculty. This is whose salary your tax dollars are paying for. We can do better. Take action. Fire these radicals. And then Clemson, you know, they're in a position, I guess. They felt like they had to say something. Here's another example of like how insane this whole thing blew up. Their statement was viewed almost 14 million times. Like, I don't know that people really care about following colleges on social media to that extent. But they said that they unequivocally condemn any and all expression that endorses, glorifies, or celebrates political violence, that they would investigate it, but that the investigation would be taken under consideration of the law, the First Amendment, the Constitution, et cetera, et cetera.
Big mistake. They were like, yeah, we do have this First Amendment, though, so we're going to kind of maybe, like, use that.
Yeah.
Nope, big
that
mistake.
Pissed off the legislators more. So then they start firing back and said, this is the U.S. House of Representatives, South Carolina, one of the representatives there, Russell Fry. Clemson is laughing at you. They don't care what you think. SC must rescue this institution from the tone-deaf woke-topians that have taken over the school or cut their funding.
That's a new one. I'm a woke-topian now. Sorry, I hadn't caught that.
Yeah, normally we say wokies, but we can be a woke-topian. And then that created the South Carolina legislature to start talking about, we really should talk about defunding Clemson University, this public school, because they are letting these leftist radical professors take over.
Have an opinion on their personal Facebook that not even their words.
Not even their words. Less than 24 hours. And they were serious about this too. Someone had asked one of those representatives, well, how would you do that? You're not even in session anymore. And she spelled it out. She said, we should be able to come in, be called back into special session next week, and make sure that our students are taken care of. And what gets people's attention the most is money. So when you start taking their money away, they start listening and can be persuaded to do the right thing. The next day, this became more formalized because the members of the South Carolina legislature sent a letter to Clemson University. And long story short, on the Joshua Breggy side, he's actually suing, thank God. And
he was fired.
He was fired.
He was fired. Didn't say that.
Oh, I know. I'm getting there. I'm getting there. But he is suing, and the ACLU is representing him out of South Carolina. And they interpreted this letter. They said, based on who signed this, they were absolutely serious about taking away money from this public university because of this one post that existed for less than 24 hours for someone's free speech, right? And Clemson issued another statement once they got that formal letter on a Saturday, by the way, and they weren't in session. They all came and wrote,
we said there was a First Amendment. That's on us. That was wrong.
So they tried. They tried to actually keep their hand in the First Amendment. Yeah, they said, we understand the frustration. We share the deep concern over the nature of these posts. However, we will continue to act within the bounds of the law and our university policies to ensure accountability and integrity. So saying, we are investigating, but we're really trying to stick to the Constitution. Please be patient. People were still not happy on Twitter. Not good enough. So then we get now all the way up to Donald Trump.
He's the president. I don't know.
So the Clemson College Republicans, their original tweet gets reposted by the leader of the Freedom Caucus in South Carolina. Donald Trump reposts that and says that the post had said, that's it. Now Clemson faculty is inciting violence against conservatives. It's time for a special session to end this. Defund Clemson, end tenure at state colleges. The Senate must pass H 3927. And Donald Trump reposted that. And then that created more eyes and more views and more outrage in social media spaces for South Carolina to do something about this supposed takeover of a public college.
To be fair to Trump, anything that wasn't the Epstein files, he's like, oh, thank God. Look at that. Look over there.
Yeah, that's true. So that was September 15th. That was a Monday. That same day, they met with Joshua Breggy and had a very short 5-minute phone call where supposedly the person who was talking with him had let him know, hey, we're going to be letting you go. I really regret this decision. I'm sorry that we're having to do this. You're a great professor. Your students love you, and I'm so sorry we're having to let you go. The day after, he receives his termination letter, and the language in that is very, very different. It says, as I told you when we met to discuss this matter, your social media repost regarding this murder very soon after it occurred was irresponsible and unprofessional. You did not show due restraint or respect, and you made no effort when you reposted to state that your views did not represent the views of Clemson University. That his post had irretrievably jeopardized his ability to serve as an intellectual guide and counselor to students, and that he had undermined his professional fitness to continue to serve as a faculty member and ability to be effective in the classroom. Then Clemson, immediately after that termination letter was sent, posted on Twitter and basically said, they're all gone. Please leave us alone. And there was celebration from lawmakers. So we see, this give and take, this back and forth.
How did this affect the Fire.org's rating of Clemson as a free speech university?
Well, it seems to have not affected it at all.
That seems
they
weird.
don't even capture it in their ratings.
And they said, here, I have the quote, they said even having an investigation over Jason Kilborn's test question, even having an investigation was why they were the top 10. UIC was in the top 10 worst colleges for free speech.
Yeah.
And you're saying this actual firing from the state, from the president, the apparatus of government, making a college fire somebody for their personal opinion on their Facebook that wasn't even anything. That didn't affect free speech ratings?
No,
Yeah.
and Fire will say,
doesn't
you
seem
know,
right,
like
doesn't it?
we spoke up about this, and when I look at that, it's a very general statement saying like, hey, stop firing people over
Yeah, don't
their
do
comments
that.
about Charlie Kirk, and then they say, you know, in some cases we've intervened, and they hyperlink that. Well, you click that, and it's a letter that they wrote to Clemson. That's the only one that they've intervened on, and the intervention was them just being like, you know, the First Amendment.
Read up, bone up on that First Amendment.
Not talking about Joshua Breggy in particular, not talking about there's another professor at Clemson who was also let go as part of this.
Yeah, there's hundreds. We're already out of time. We tried to pack enough in. There's hundreds though. So the story that was fake, that was part of a propaganda effort backed by billionaires, that I think is a big reason we're here. A lot of people are under the impression that there's these crazy college kids doing this free speech stuff, and that is part of what led to this administration being back on power and actually doing a far worse version of the thing they were making up. And I'm sitting here I feel insane over this. I mean, it's like the boy who cried wolf, but if the boy was part of an organized propaganda machine funded by Big Wolf, you know, like just billionaire wolves, pumping out story after story about how everything that wasn't a wolf was a wolf, until the town's sense of reality was so fundamentally warped that they actually elect a wolf as mayor. That's what it is. It's like that. And then meanwhile, I was the boy who was calling not wolf. I was like, that's not a wolf, not a wolf, not a wolf, not a wolf, until wolf mayor. And I'm like, well, that is one. That's a wolf. And they're like, but we like wolf mayor. He protects us from the wolves. That's where we are right now. And it's really sad. And as skeptics, this happened on our watch, you know? This is something that we can't undo it now, but all I can ask is that people be skeptical going forward. When you hear a story about they went crazy, it still happens every day on Fox News and elsewhere. Well, the kids went crazy. The students went crazy. Who's they? What did they do? What actually happened?
And what
Ask
happened?
basic questions of skepticism, ever. You know, like if our society had been doing this from the start about this propaganda, and we're just isolating one type of propaganda. I know there's so much. And this isn't responsible for everything. But on this one thing alone, if you ask basic skeptic questions, well, who? What happened? You know, what happened to the professor? Did they actually get fired? You're like asking these questions. Bill Maher, asking these questions. That's what we needed. It happened on our watch, and now we have wolf mayor. It's so disappointing. I don't even know how to deal with it. And I just wanted to say another thing I thought of. I'm sorry to single out skeptics, but this was one, we picked this free speech one particularly because this was really, I think, one that some of our community fell for. Because I think we are people, as free thinkers, as skeptics, who pride ourselves on being open to ideas and on debate. And so when we hear a story about how some crazy kids somewhere weren't that, it's really easy for us to be like, ooh, my identity is not that, so I believe you that there were these people who are, you know, an other that is not open to ideas and is not willing to debate. It's just easy for us to believe that. But the truth is, it's just not really true. I mean, it's just little events. I break down these stories, and in the end, one thing I like to do on our show is try to rewrite the headline how it should have been. And it's usually like, kid complained about teacher. And it's like, would that be a national news story?
Friends on
Should there be any reason we heard about that?
Yeah.
No. Should there be a reason you hear about a teacher getting fired and the president of the United States making it happen through the government? Yes, that you should hear about. We should be hearing about that. And so it's these kind of, now I call it the context debunk too, which is like even just thinking about free speech at the workplace, because that's what campus free speech is. It's a workplace for professors. Well, Amazon and Starbucks fires employees for saying the word union. That's not seen as a free speech controversy. That's not covered by fire.org. That's worse. That affects more people than what some college complaint that a college professor got. Yeah. So anyway, I know this is hyper specific, but there's a reason we went this way, and we are already out of time. But thank you so much for listening.
Yeah, thank you.
Please check out Where There's Woke, and be skeptical. Ask questions when somebody gives you a story like that. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Another big round of applause for Thomas and Lydia Smith. And don't forget to check out Where There's Woke.